The morning started like any other at Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station. Daniel Cooper sat at his console, drinking his third cup of coffee and watching the endless stream of data from the outer sectors. He was tired. The night shift always left him drained, but someone had to watch the signals coming from distant space. Then everything changed. His screen lit up with red warnings. A distress call was coming through, broken and weak, but unmistakable. Daniel sat up straight, his exhaustion forgotten. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he tried to clean up the signal. "Commander Hayes, you need to hear this," he called out. Patricia Hayes walked over quickly. She had been in the military for 20 years, and she knew that tone in Daniel's voice. Something was very wrong. The message played through the speakers. It was hard to understand at first, full of static and gaps. But then they heard it clearly. A voice, high and trembling with fear, speaking in the universal trade language. "Please, anyone who can hear this. We are under attack. Our colony has no weapons, no defenses. They are killing us. Please help. This is Sanctuary Prime. Please, we need help." Patricia felt her chest tighten. The voice belonged to a Velen. She knew about them. Everyone in Earth's military did. The Velen were one of the gentlest species in the galaxy. They made art and music. They studied the stars and wrote poetry. They had never hurt anyone in their entire history, and now someone was attacking them. "Get me Captain Morrison on the Defender right now," Patricia ordered. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking with anger. Within minutes, the call connected. Captain Jake Morrison appeared on the screen. He was a big man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had seen combat before, plenty of it. But when Patricia played him the distress call, something changed in his face. "How far away are they?" Jake asked. 6 jumps. "About 18 hours if we push the engines hard," Patricia replied. Jake nodded slowly. He was thinking, calculating. "Tell the Ranger and the Swift to prepare for emergency jump. Get all Marines ready for combat deployment. And Patricia, send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them we're invoking the Protection Accords." Patricia understood what that meant. The Protection Accords were ancient laws that said peaceful species must be protected. But those laws hadn't been used in hundreds of years. Most species just talked about them. They never actually did anything, but humans were different. On the Defender, the crew moved into action. Alarms rang through the hallways. Marines grabbed their weapons and armor. Engineers pushed the ship's engines to maximum power. Everyone knew what was happening. Everyone knew why it mattered. In the Marine Bay, Sergeant Kyle Bennett gathered his squad. 20 men and women stood before him, each one a trained soldier. They had fought pirates before. They had defended merchant ships and escorted diplomats. But this was different. "Listen up," Kyle said, his voice carrying through the bay. "We're going to help the Velen. They're pacifists. That means they don't fight. They don't even know how to fight. Right now, they're being attacked by the Krell Syndicate." A few Marines cursed. Everyone knew about the Krell. They were pirates and slavers. They traveled through the outer sectors, attacking anyone too weak to fight back. They took what they wanted and left destruction behind. "How many Krell?" asked Private Lisa Carter. She was young, barely 22, and this would be her first real combat mission. "We don't know yet," Kyle answered honestly. "But it doesn't matter. Our job is simple. We stop them. We save as many Velen as we can. And we make sure the Krell regret ever touching that colony." The Marines nodded. They checked their weapons one more time. They helped each other with armor straps. They were scared, but they were ready. On the bridge, Jake stood at the command console. His first officer, Lieutenant Amy Brooks, was coordinating with the other ships. The Defender, Ranger, and Swift were all preparing to jump together. "Captain, we have a transmission from the Council," Amy said. Jake shook his head. "I don't have time for Council politics right now. Tell them we'll report in after we've handled the situation." Amy hesitated. "Sir, they're saying we need to wait for authorization. They want to investigate first, send diplomats, follow proper procedures." Jake turned to look at her. His voice was quiet but hard as steel. Amy, how long will that take? According to protocol, at least 2 weeks for investigation, then another week for council debate, then... The Velen don't have 2 weeks, Jake interrupted. They probably don't have 2 days. We're going now. If the council has a problem with that, they can file a complaint after we've saved those people. The ship jumped into hyperspace. The stars stretched and blurred around them. Jake watched the timer counting down. 18 hours. They had to make it in time. In her quarters, Dr. Helen Price was preparing the medical bay. She set up extra beds and organized supplies. She didn't know how many wounded there would be. She didn't know if they would be human or Velen. She just knew she had to be ready. Helen had joined the military because she wanted to help people. Earth was a dangerous place and doctors were always needed. But out here in space, she had found a bigger purpose. There were so many species that needed help. So many that couldn't defend themselves. The Velen were just the latest. As the hours passed, more distress calls came from Sanctuary Prime. Each one was worse than the last. The Velen were begging for help. They were hiding in buildings while the Krell hunted them. They were watching their friends and family die. And all they could do was wait and hope that someone would come on Earth. Word was spreading. The news networks picked up the story. People watched the broadcasts with growing anger. The Velen had welcomed humans into the galaxy. When other species said humans were too violent, too dangerous, the Velen had defended them. The Velen had shown them kindness. Now it was time to return that kindness. More human ships began moving toward the outer sectors. Not because they were ordered to, but because it was the right thing to do. Captains volunteered their vessels. Marines called in from leave. Engineers worked double shifts to get ships ready faster. Humanity was mobilizing, and the galaxy was about to learn what that meant. On the Defender's bridge, Jake watched the clock. 16 hours to go, then 15, then 14. Each hour felt like a lifetime. Each minute was another chance for the Velen to die while waiting for help. Captain, Amy said quietly, I'm picking up more signals. There are at least 12 Krell ships in orbit around Sanctuary Prime, and they have troops on the ground. Jake's jaw tightened. 12 ships. That was more than they expected. The 3 human vessels would be outnumbered 4-1. Change of plans, Jake said. Contact the Guardian and Resolute. Tell them to jump ahead of us and wait in stealth mode. When we arrive, we'll hit the Krell from 2 sides at once. Amy smiled grimly. An ambush. The Krell won't see it coming. They're about to learn a hard lesson, Jake replied. You don't attack the defenseless. Not while humans are watching. The ships jumped through space, racing toward Sanctuary Prime. In the marine bays, soldiers sharpened their skills and prepared their minds. In the medical centers, doctors readied their tools and said quiet prayers. In the engine rooms, technicians pushed the machinery to its absolute limits. Everyone on those ships knew what was at stake. They knew that innocent people were dying while they traveled through the void. They knew that every second counted, but they also knew something else. They knew that help was coming. They knew that the Deathworlders from Earth were on their way, and when humans decided to protect someone, nothing in the galaxy could stop them. The message went out across all channels, broadcast to every monitoring station in the sector. It was simple and direct. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Battlecruiser Defender. We are responding to the distress call from Sanctuary Prime to any Krell forces in the area. You have one chance to withdraw peacefully. If you are still there when we arrive, you will face the consequences. This is your only warning. The Krell, celebrating their easy raid on the Helpless colony, laughed when they heard the message. Humans were just one species. What could they do? They were about to find out. The Defender dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sanctuary Prime system. Immediately, alarms started blaring across the bridge. Red lights flashed on every console. The enemy was here, and they were ready. Report, Captain Jake Morrison said, his voice steady despite the chaos. Lieutenant Amy Brooks worked her console quickly, her eyes scanning the data. 12 Krell vessels confirmed, Captain. I'm seeing raiders, assault ships, and 1 heavy cruiser. They're in orbit around the planet. And sir, they're actively firing on the surface. Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept it controlled. Anger was useful only if you could direct it properly. Life signs on the planet? Amy's face went pale as she read the numbers. Detecting Velen life signs scattered across the colony. Many are in hiding. I'm also reading Krell ground troops, approximately 200 soldiers on the surface. Captain, the main settlement is badly damaged. Fires everywhere. Multiple buildings have collapsed. How long until they detect us? They already have. The Krell cruiser is hailing us now. Jake straightened in his chair. Put them on screen. The view screen flickered and a Krell commander appeared. The alien was covered in red scales with black eyes that showed no emotion. Its mouth was full of sharp teeth. When it spoke, the computer translated its hissing voice into flat words. Human vessel, you are interfering in Krell business. This colony is ours by right of conquest. Leave now or be destroyed. Jake stood up slowly. Every person on the bridge watched him. He was not a tall man, but right now he seemed to fill the entire room with his presence. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but deadly serious. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Battlecruiser Defender. You are attacking a protected colony. You are killing innocent civilians. You are violating every law that civilized species follow. You have 60 seconds to withdraw your forces and surrender. This is your only chance. The Krell commander made a sound that might have been laughter. You are 3 ships against our 12. You have no authority here, human. This is the Outer Rim. Only the strong survive here. Last warning. Leave or die with them. Jake looked at Amy. She nodded slightly. Everything was ready? There's something you should know about humans, Jake said to the Krell. We don't make threats. We make promises. And I promise you this. If you don't surrender right now, none of your ships will leave this system. The Krell commander's smile faded. You are bluffing, am I? Jake asked. Computer, execute Delta formation. All ships, weapons free. Show them what they're really facing. Suddenly, the space around the Krell fleet lit up. The 3 human ships that had been visible activated all their weapon systems. Targeting lasers painted every Krell vessel. But that wasn't the scary part. 2 more human ships appeared behind the Krell fleet. The Guardian and the Resolute had been hiding in stealth mode, waiting for this exact moment. Now they dropped their concealment and powered up their weapons. The Krell were surrounded. 5 human warships against 12 Krell raiders, Jake said calmly. Still think we're bluffing? You have 10 seconds to surrender. For a moment, nobody moved. The Krell commander stared at the screen, probably calculating odds, considering options. Then his face twisted with rage. Kill them all. The Krell screamed. The screen went dark. A second later, the Krell fleet opened fire. It was the biggest mistake they would ever make. The battle started fast and ended faster. Human weapons were designed to fight in the worst conditions imaginable. Earth's wars had taught humanity how to build ships that could take damage and keep fighting. More importantly, they had taught humans how to fight smart. Ranger, target the cruiser's engines, Amy called out, coordinating the attack. Swift, take those 2 raiders on the left. Guardian and Resolute, sweep the right flank. Don't let anything escape. The Defender's main cannon fired. A beam of pure energy crossed the distance in a heartbeat and struck a Krell raider dead center. The alien ship's shields flickered and died. The second shot punched straight through the hull. The raider exploded in a ball of fire on the gun deck. Sergeant Tyler Davis and his crew worked their weapons with perfect timing. They had trained for years to do this job. Every shot counted. Every target had to be hit exactly right. Target locked, Tyler reported. Firing. Another Krell ship died. Then another. The battle was barely 2 minutes old, and the Krell had already lost 3 ships. The Krell cruiser tried to run. It turned away from the planet, trying to reach a safe distance to jump into hyperspace. But Captain Morrison had expected that. Amy cut them off. I want that cruiser disabled, not destroyed. We need prisoners. Yes, sir. Helm, bring us around. Weapons, target their engines only. Lieutenant Chris Palmer, the helmsman, pushed the Defender into a tight turn. The massive ship moved like it was much smaller. Earth's heavy gravity meant humans had to build everything stronger, tougher, able to handle more stress. Now that engineering paid off. The Defender's weapons fired again. This time they aimed carefully, hitting the cruiser's engines and power systems. Explosions rippled along the Krell ship's hull. Its engines died. It hung in space, helpless and dead. "Cruiser disabled, Captain," Amy reported. "The rest of the Krell fleet is breaking formation. They're trying to scatter." "Don't let them," Jake ordered. "Every ship that attacked this colony has to answer for it. No one escapes." The 5 human ships moved through the Krell fleet like wolves among sheep. The aliens had numbers, but humans had something better. They had training. They had technology. And right now, they had rage. The battle lasted 8 minutes total. When it ended, 11 Krell ships were destroyed. Only the cruiser remained, captured and helpless. Not a single human ship had taken serious damage. "Status report," Jake demanded. Amy checked her displays. "All human vessels reporting minor damage only. No casualties. The Krell cruiser is secured. The orbital space is clear." Jake nodded. Now came the hard part. Open a channel to the surface teams. Tell them they're clear to drop. In the hangar bay, Sergeant Kyle Bennett's Marines were already in their drop pods. They had watched the battle on their displays. They had seen how quickly the human ships destroyed the enemy. Now it was their turn. "All units, final check," Kyle called out. The Marines checked their weapons and armor one last time. Private Lisa Carter took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. This was really happening. Her first combat mission. Her first time dropping into a war zone. "Scared?" Kyle asked her quietly. "Yes, Sergeant," Lisa admitted. Kyle nodded. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just remember your training and stay with your squad. We're going down there to save people, not to be heroes. Understand?" "Yes, Sergeant. Launch in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, drop." The pods fell away from the Defender like meteors. They punched through Sanctuary Prime's atmosphere, heat shields glowing bright as they fell. Inside, the Marines felt the pressure of rapid descent. This was always the worst part, the waiting while you fell toward the ground and hoped nothing went wrong. The pods hit the surface in a coordinated pattern. They landed around the main Krell force, surrounding them completely. Hatches blew open with explosive charges. Marines poured out into the smoke and fire of the ruined colony. What they saw made them angry. Buildings were burning. Bodies lay in the streets, small Velen civilians who had never hurt anyone. Krell soldiers stood among the ruins, weapons in hand, looking surprised that anyone had dared to fight back. "Contact front." Someone shouted. Kyle raised his rifle and fired in one smooth motion. A Krell soldier who was aiming at a group of hiding Velen went down. Kyle didn't think about it. He just moved, his training taking over. Spread out. Rules of engagement are active. Protect civilians first. Neutralize all hostiles. Take prisoners if possible, but if they resist, put them down hard. The Marines moved through the burning colony like ghosts. They had trained for years in Earth's harsh environment. The gravity here was lighter than home. The air was cleaner. Everything was easier. They could move faster, jump higher, fight longer. The Krell had made a terrible mistake. They had attacked a colony protected by humans. Now they were learning what that protection meant. Private Lisa Carter came around a corner and found herself facing a Krell soldier. The alien was twice her size, covered in armor and scales. It raised its weapon with a hissing laugh, probably thinking this small human was easy prey. Lisa moved without thinking. Her training kicked in automatically. She ducked under the Krell's aim, closed the distance in 2 quick steps, and struck with all the strength that growing up in Earth's heavy gravity had given her. The Krell went down hard, unconscious before it hit the ground. "Hostile neutralized," Lisa reported, her voice shaking slightly. "Good work, Carter," Kyle replied over the comm. Keep moving. We've got civilians to save. All across the colony, similar scenes played out. The Krell ground troops, cut off from their ships and facing an enemy they had badly underestimated, tried to fight back. But it was useless. The humans were faster, stronger, and far better trained. Within 20 minutes. The main Krell force was surrounded and pinned down. Within 30 minutes most of them had surrendered. The few who kept fighting didn't last long. Kyle stood in what had been the colony's central square, now a burned and ruined mess. Around him, his Marines were securing prisoners and helping frightened Velen civilians out of hiding. The battle was over. The smoke was starting to clear over Sanctuary Prime, but the damage was everywhere. Sergeant Kyle Bennett walked through the ruined streets, stepping carefully over debris. His Marines were spread out across the colony, searching every building for survivors and making sure no Krell soldiers were hiding. Squad 2. Report, Kyle said into his com. We found another shelter, Sergeant, came the reply. About 20 Velen inside. They're scared but alive. Kyle nodded, even though no one could see him. Good, get them to the medical station. Make sure they know they're safe now. He continued walking, his rifle ready but lowered. The fighting was over, but training said to stay alert. Around him, other Marines were doing the same thing. They moved carefully, checking every shadow, every doorway. Private Lisa Carter was with a small group near what had been a school. The building was partially collapsed, but they could hear sounds from inside. Small voices calling out in fear. We've got survivors in here, Lisa reported. Sounds like children. The entrance is blocked. Hold position, Kyle replied. I'm sending Corporal Danny Wright with cutting tools. Don't try to move anything until he gets there. We don't want to cause more collapse. Lisa acknowledged and knelt down near the rubble. She could see a small gap between broken pieces of wall. Through it she could see eyes looking back at her. Large, frightened eyes belonging to a Velen child. Hey there, Lisa said softly, trying to make her voice gentle. Can you hear me? Are you here to hurt us? A small voice asked. Lisa felt her heart break a little. No, we're here to help. We're humans. We came because you called for help. You're safe now. I promise. But the bad ones said nobody would come. They said nobody cared about us. They were wrong, Lisa said firmly. We care. We're going to get you out of there, okay? My friend Danny is coming with tools. We'll have you out soon. Danny arrived a few minutes later with a plasma cutter and stabilizing equipment. He was a big man, strong even by human standards, but he moved carefully around the collapsed building. One wrong move could bring more debris down on the trapped children. How many inside? Danny asked. At least 6, maybe more, Lisa replied. They're scared. Danny nodded and started working. He cut through the rubble piece by piece, always making sure nothing would shift or fall. It was slow work, but it had to be done right. After 20 minutes, he had cleared an opening big enough for the children to crawl through. Okay, little ones, Lisa called through the gap. We've made a way out. Can you come through one at a time? The first child emerged, covered in dust but unharmed. Then another. And another. 7 Velen children in total, all of them looking up at the human soldiers with wonder and fear mixed together. You're really here, one of them whispered. You really came? Lisa knelt down and very gently brushed dust off the child's head. We told you we would. Humans keep their promises. Across the colony, more survivors were being found. Some had hidden in basements. Others had fled into the forests outside the settlement. Many were injured, but they were alive. Every time the Marines found survivors, they called for medical help immediately. Dr. Helen Price had set up a field hospital in one of the few buildings still intact. She worked quickly, moving from patient to patient. Most of the injuries were burns, cuts, and broken bones. Nothing her medical technology couldn't handle, but there were so many of them. Doctor, we've got more incoming, a medic called out. 10 civilians, various injuries. Helen looked up from the Velen she was treating. Set them up in the next room. I'll be there in 2 minutes. She finished bandaging her current patient, an elderly Velen named Ven. His leg was badly hurt, but he would survive. He looked up at her with grateful eyes. "Thank you," Ven said quietly. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for caring." Helen patted his shoulder gently. "Rest now. You're safe. We're going to rebuild this place, I promise you that." She moved to the next room where the new patients were waiting. As she worked, she could hear the sounds of the colony around her. Marines calling to each other. Velen crying with relief. The hum of human machinery as engineers started clearing rubble and putting out fires. This was why she had become a doctor. This was why she had joined the military. To help people who needed it most. In the central square, Commander Sarah Mitchell had set up a command post. She was coordinating all the rescue efforts, making sure every building was searched, every survivor was found. She stood at a tactical display, marking off areas as they were cleared. "Status report from all teams," Sarah called out. The squad leaders reported in one by one. "East sector clear. North sector clear. West sector still searching. South sector clear except for one large building that might have survivors." "Which building?" Sarah asked. "The administration center, ma'am," someone replied. "We're detecting life signs inside, both Velen and Krell. Looks like a hostage situation." Sarah's expression hardened. Of course it couldn't be simple. There were always a few who fought to the very end. "Kyle, are you near that location?" "Yes, ma'am," Kyle's voice came back. "I can see it from here. It's fortified. They've barricaded the doors and windows. Hold position. I'm coming to you." Sarah walked quickly through the ruined streets, her boots crunching on broken glass and debris. Other Marines joined her as she moved. By the time she reached Kyle's position, she had a full squad with her. The administration building was large and made of stone. The Krell inside had chosen well. It was defensible and hard to assault without causing serious damage. Through the windows, Sarah could see movement. Krell soldiers and Velen civilians mixed together. "Options?" Sarah asked Kyle. "We could breach from multiple points," Kyle suggested. "Fast assault, neutralize the hostiles before they can hurt anyone. Risk to the civilians? Present but manageable. We're good at this kind of thing." Sarah thought about it. She had been a soldier for 15 years. She had led dozens of rescue operations. But every time there was this moment, this decision between caution and action. Take too long and people die. Move too fast and people die. Find the right balance and everyone goes home. "Set up for breach," Sarah decided. "But first I'm going to try talking to them." She walked forward until she was in clear view of the building. Then she activated her suit's external speakers so her voice would carry. "Krell forces inside the building. This is Commander Sarah Mitchell of the Earth Marines. You are surrounded. Your ships are destroyed. Your army is captured. You have nowhere to go. Release the civilians and surrender. This is your only chance to survive." For a moment there was silence. Then a Krell voice answered, harsh and angry. "We have hostages, human. Give us safe passage to a ship or we start killing them." Sarah kept her voice calm. "No, that's not how this works. You attacked a protected colony. You murdered innocent people. There is no safe passage for you. Surrender or die. Choose now, then they die with us." Sarah switched to the command channel. "All teams, prepare to breach on my mark. Danny, take your team to the back entrance. Kyle, you're going through the front. I want this clean. No civilian casualties. Understand?" "Understood, ma'am," both men replied. Sarah counted down silently. She could see her teams moving into position. They were ready. The Krell inside had no idea what was about to hit them. 3, 2, 1, mark. The back entrance exploded inward. The front doors were blown off their hinges. Marines poured into the building from every direction, moving so fast they were almost a blur. The Krell inside tried to react, but they were too slow. Danny came face to face with a Krell holding a Velen civilian as a shield. The alien's weapon was pressed against the small creature's head. For most species, this would be an impossible situation. Too risky. Too dangerous, but Danny had trained for this exact scenario hundreds of times. His rifle came up smoothly. His targeting system locked on. He fired once. The shot was perfect. The Krell dropped, and the Velen was unharmed except for a slight burn mark where the bullet had passed so close it singed their fur, all through the building. Similar things happened. Marines moved with precision and speed. They knew where every civilian was. They knew where every hostile was. Their suits gave them information faster than the Krell could think. In 90 seconds, it was over. 14 Krell were captured. 6 were dead. Every single Velen civilian was safe. Sarah walked through the building, checking each room. In one room, she found a group of Velen huddled together, still shaking with fear. She knelt down to their level, making herself less threatening. "It's over," she said gently. "You're safe now. Come on, let's get you outside." One of the Velen looked at her with wonder. "How did you move so fast? How did you know where everyone was?" Sarah helped them to their feet. "We trained for this. On Earth, we train for every possibility." "It's what we do, but why?" the Velen asked. "Why do you care so much about us?" Sarah paused at the doorway and looked back. "Because someone has to. Because the strong should protect the weak. Because it's the right thing to do." Outside, the sun was setting over Sanctuary Prime. The fires were mostly out now. The Marines had secured the entire colony. Medics were treating the last of the wounded. Engineers were already planning the reconstruction. Then, the elderly Velen administrator found Kyle standing in the square. The human soldier was watching the sunset, his helmet off for the first time since landing. 3 days after the battle, Sanctuary Prime looked different. Human engineering teams had arrived with equipment and supplies. Burned buildings were being torn down. New structures were going up in their place. The Velen worked alongside the humans. Learning as they rebuilt their home, Lieutenant Gary Foster stood in what would soon be the new community center, reviewing construction plans with a group of Velen architects. Gary had been an engineer before joining the military, and now his skills were being put to good use. "The support beams go here and here," Gary explained, pointing to the holographic blueprints floating in the air. "This design will make the building much stronger. If something like this ever happens again, these structures will provide better protection." One of the Velen architects, a young female named Tora, studied the plans carefully. "Your building methods are so different from ours. Everything is reinforced, layered, designed to withstand damage. Is this because of your world?" Gary nodded. "On Earth, buildings have to survive earthquakes, hurricanes, floods. We learned to build strong because we had no choice. Now we're sharing that knowledge with you." "We are grateful," Tora said quietly. "Before we built for beauty. Now we understand we must also build for safety." Outside, Marines were helping Velen civilians clear debris from the streets. Private Lisa Carter worked with a group of children, showing them how to sort materials for recycling. The children had been scared of her at first, but now they followed her around constantly. "Miss Lisa," one of the children asked, "why do humans help so much? You saved us, but you didn't leave. You stayed to help us rebuild." Lisa paused in her work and knelt down to the child's level. "Because saving you was just the first step. We want to make sure you're okay. We want to make sure this doesn't happen again." "That's what friends do. We're friends," the child asked with wonder. "Of course we are," Lisa replied, smiling. "You needed help, and we came. That makes us friends." The child hugged her suddenly, its small arms barely reaching around Lisa's armored leg. She felt tears sting her eyes, but kept smiling. In the medical center, Dr. Helen Price was training Velen healers in emergency medicine. Her best student was a healer named Sora, who had shown remarkable skill during the crisis. "The most important thing in trauma medicine is staying calm," Helen explained, demonstrating on a training dummy. "You can't help anyone if you panic. Assess the injury. Stop the bleeding. Stabilize the patient. Then move on to the next one." Sora watched carefully, her delicate hands mimicking Helen's movements. But how do you choose? When there are many injured and you can only help one at a time? Helen's expression grew sad. It's called triage. You help those who will die without immediate care first. Those who are stable can wait. And those who are beyond help, you have to let them go so you can save others. It's the hardest part of being a doctor. You have had to make such choices? Sora asked softly. Many times, Helen admitted. Too many times. But I don't think about the ones I couldn't save. I think about the ones I did save. Like you. Like all your people who survived because we got here in time. Sora touched Helen's hand gently. You are very strong. Not just your body, but your spirit. Helen smiled. All humans are strong. We have to be. But thank you. In orbit around Sanctuary Prime, a very different scene was playing out. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the brig of the captured Krell cruiser, facing the alien commander who had ordered the attack. Commander Patricia Hayes stood beside him, recording everything. You will tell us who authorized this raid, Patricia said, her voice cold and professional. The Krell Syndicate doesn't attack randomly. Someone gave orders. The Krell commander remained silent, his black eyes staring at nothing. Jake leaned against the wall, his arms crossed. You don't seem to understand your situation. Your fleet is destroyed. Your soldiers are captured. Your leaders have abandoned you. We found your ship's computer logs. We know this wasn't your only raid. We know you've hit 17 colonies in the past year. The Krell's eyes flickered. That got a reaction. 17 colonies, Jake continued. Hundreds of dead civilians. Thousands enslaved or missing. And you know what the worst part is? The Galactic Council knew. They received distress calls. They logged the reports, and they did nothing. Why do you care? The Krell finally asked, his voice harsh. These were not your people. Not your colonies. You risk your lives for strangers. Why? Jake and Patricia exchanged a look. How did you explain human morality to someone who had none? Because it matters, Jake said simply. Because every life matters. Because the strong should protect the weak, not prey on them. You chose to be a predator. Now you face the consequences. Foolish, the Krell hissed. The galaxy belongs to the strong. Always has. Always will. Patricia stepped forward. Then you're about to learn a new law? When humans are involved, the strong protect the weak. And right now, humans are very involved. The interrogation went on for hours. Slowly, piece by piece, the Krell commander's resistance crumbled. He was scared. He had seen what humans could do. He had watched his fleet destroyed in minutes. He knew that defiance would gain him nothing. Finally, he started talking. He gave names, locations, details about other raids being planned, information about the Syndicate's leadership and bases. Everything Patricia needed to dismantle the organization completely. Why did you break? Jake asked when it was over. Why give up your people? The Krell looked at him with something that might have been respect. Because you are apex predators. I recognize this now. My people thought you were weak because you spoke of peace. We were wrong. You are the most dangerous species in the galaxy precisely because you choose when to be violent. That choice makes you unpredictable, terrifying. Far away on Earth in the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Catherine Wells was presenting her report. The chamber was packed with representatives from dozens of species. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked angry or afraid. The events at Sanctuary Prime demonstrate a failure of the Council, Catherine said, her voice carrying through the vast space. A protected colony was attacked. They sent distress calls, and the Council did nothing. We followed proper procedures, Ambassador Krell protested. He was a distant relative of the raiders, and his species' reputation was now in ruins. These things take time. Investigation, deliberation, proper authorization, which would have taken weeks, Catherine interrupted. The Velen didn't have weeks. They had hours. By the time the Council finished deliberating, they would have been dead or enslaved. She pulled up holographic displays showing the battle, the rescue, the reconstruction. Humanity took action because it was the right thing to do. We didn't ask for permission because there wasn't time. We saved lives that would have been lost while the council debated. You overstepped your authority, another ambassador accused. You acted like the galaxy's police force. Catherine's eyes hardened. No, we acted like decent people. There's a difference. We didn't attack because we wanted to. We attacked because someone had to. Because sitting around talking while innocents die is not acceptable. Ambassador Velen, a small figure in the massive chamber, rose to speak. His voice was quiet, but everyone listened. 3 days ago, my people were being murdered. We called for help as the Protection Accords guarantee. We waited. We hoped. We died, and then the humans came. He looked around the chamber. They didn't come because it benefited them. They didn't come because they wanted something from us. They came because we needed help and they could provide it. They risked their lives for strangers. They stayed to help us rebuild. They are teaching us how to protect ourselves so this never happens again. Ambassador Velen's voice grew stronger. I have heard many species say that humans are dangerous, that they come from a death world and cannot be trusted. Today I tell you that you are right to call them dangerous, but not because they are violent. They are dangerous because they have principles and they refuse to compromise them. They are dangerous because they will not stand by while evil happens. They are dangerous because they actually mean it when they say all lives matter. The chamber was silent. Catherine waited, letting the words sink in. Finally, Council Speaker Tharn spoke. What do you propose, Ambassador Wells? A rapid response force, Catherine replied. A military unit with the authority to respond to emergencies immediately. No waiting for full council approval. No weeks of deliberation while people die. When a protected colony is attacked, the response force moves. Fast, hard, and with full council backing. And who commands this force? Someone asked. Joint command, Catherine said. Human ships will form the core, yes. We have the experience and the will to act. But any species that wants to contribute can join. The Harmonic, the Piri, the Velen? Anyone who believes that protection means action, not just words. The debate went on for hours, but in the end the vote passed. The Rapid Response Force was approved. It wasn't perfect. Some species refused to join. Others pledged only token support. But it was a start. More importantly, it was a message to the predators of the galaxy. The days of easy prey were over. Back on Sanctuary Prime, Sergeant Kyle Bennett stood with Ven in the rebuilt Central Square. The new buildings gleamed in the sunlight. Velen children played in the streets without fear. Marines patrolled the... 6 months had passed since the Battle of Sanctuary Prime. The galaxy was different now. The Rapid Response Force, which everyone called the Guardian Fleet, had answered 14 emergency calls. Each time, they arrived quickly and ended the threat. Each time, the attackers learned the same lesson the Krell had learned. Don't attack the helpless. Not while humans are watching. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defender, which was now the flagship of the entire Guardian Fleet. Today, they were conducting training exercises with ships from 6 different species. He watched the tactical display as vessels practiced coordination and response drills. How are our new friends doing? Jake asked. Lieutenant Amy Brooks smiled as she reviewed the data. Better than expected, actually. The Harmonic Cruiser has fully integrated our scanning systems. The Piri frigates are getting good at weapons coordination. Even the Jelly managed to crew 3 ships with mixed crews, despite living underwater normally. And the Velen? Amy's smile grew wider. That's the most interesting part, sir. They've created something called the Shield Corps. It's not a military in the traditional sense, but trained civilians who can protect colonies until help arrives. They're teaching other peaceful species the same techniques. Jake nodded with approval. That was exactly what he had hoped for. Humanity couldn't protect everyone all the time. But they could teach others to protect themselves on Sanctuary Prime. That Shield Corps was having its first major training exercise. Ven, fully recovered from his injuries, served as an advisor. He watched young Velen practice defensive tactics under the guidance of Sergeant Kyle Bennett and his Marines. "Remember, you're not trying to win a battle," Kyle explained to the trainees. "You're buying time. Stay mobile, use cover, protect civilians first. Your job is to be a shield, not a sword." A young Velen named Torah raised her hand. She had been one of the children trapped in the rubble during the attack. Now she was old enough to join the Shield Corps. "Sergeant Kyle, what if we get too scared? What if fear makes us freeze?" Kyle walked over and knelt beside her. "Fear is natural. Every Marine in my squad felt fear during the battle. Even me. The trick is to train so much that your body knows what to do even when your mind is scared. That's why we practice until these movements become automatic." Another trainee spoke up. "But you're from Earth. You're predators. You grew up with danger. How can we ever be like you?" "You're not trying to be like us," Kyle corrected gently. "You're learning to be the best version of yourselves. A warrior seeks victory. A protector seeks to minimize harm. You're doing this not because you want to fight, but because you love your people enough to stand between them and danger. That takes a different kind of courage." Ven watched the exchange with pride. His people were changing. They were learning. They would never be warriors like humans, but they didn't need to be. They just needed to be brave enough to hold out until help arrived. In the medical center, Dr. Helen Price was teaching advanced trauma care to healers from 4 different species. Her star student, Sora, had become an instructor herself, teaching other Velen what Helen had taught her. "The key to saving lives is staying calm and moving fast," Helen explained to the mixed class. "You assess, you prioritize, you act. Every second counts, but panic helps nobody." A harmonic healer, whose species communicated partly through vibrations, asked a question. "How do you handle the emotional weight, knowing that your choices determine who lives and who dies?" Helen paused, considering. "You remember why you're doing it. Every person you save is someone who gets to go home. Someone who gets another day with their family. Yes, you'll lose some patience. That never gets easier. But you don't focus on the ones you lost. You focus on the ones you saved. That's what keeps you going." Sora nodded in agreement. "Dr. Helen taught me that healing is not about being perfect. It's about doing your best with what you have, and then doing it again tomorrow." Far away in the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Catherine Wells was presenting a new proposal. The chamber was packed with representatives, and the mood was very different from 6 months ago. "The Guardian fleet has proven the concept," Catherine said. "Rapid response saves lives. But we can do more." I proposed the Sanctuary Network, a galaxy-wide system of protected colonies, sensor arrays, and response stations. No peaceful species should ever wonder if help will come in time. There was murmuring throughout the chamber. The proposal was ambitious. It would require resources from every member species. It would change the way the galaxy operated. Ambassador Krell, whose species had been humbled by recent events, spoke carefully. Such a network would be expensive. It would require significant commitment from all of us. "It would," Catherine agreed. "But consider what we're spending now: refugee relief, reconstruction, medical care for attack survivors, security investigations after the fact. How much is prevention worth compared to dealing with disasters after they happen?" Ambassador Velen stood, his small form commanding attention despite his size. "My people pledged 10% of our resources to this initiative. We have no warships to contribute. But we can provide medical technology, engineering support, and personnel for non-combat roles. We may not be fighters, but we can be healers and builders." One by one, other peaceful species added their support. The Harmonic pledged their advanced communication technology. The Piri offered their fast courier ships. The Gentle provided their expertise in sensor networks. Dozens of species that had lived in fear for generations were finally finding their voice. "The humans showed us something important," Ambassador Harmonic said, her voice resonating through the chamber. "They showed us that strength doesn't require cruelty. They showed us that the powerful can choose to protect instead of dominate. And they showed us that we, the peaceful species, are not helpless when we stand together." The vote took hours, but eventually the Sanctuary Network was approved. It would be the largest cooperative project in galactic history. Human military expertise would design the defense systems. Velen engineers would build the structures. Harmonic diplomats would manage the politics. Every species would contribute what they could. It was the galaxy learning to protect itself. Private Lisa Carter, now promoted to corporal, was assigned to help train the new Shield Corps units across multiple worlds. She traveled with a team of instructors, teaching defensive tactics and emergency response on a harmonic colony. She stood before a class of crystalline beings who had never known violence in their entire history. Teaching them to defend themselves felt strange at first. But she remembered Sanctuary Prime. She remembered the children she had saved. "You might think you can't do this," Lisa told her students. "You might think you're too peaceful, too gentle, too different from humans. But that's not what this is about. This is about caring enough to be brave. Can you do that?" The harmonic students vibrated in agreement, their form of nodding. "Good," Lisa said, smiling. "Then let's begin. By the time we're done, you'll know how to protect your families until help arrives. And help will always arrive. That's the promise humanity made. That's the promise we keep." In a dingy bar on a space station far from any major colony, a very different conversation was happening. A group of criminals sat around a table, discussing potential targets for raids. "What about the Piri colonies?" one suggested. "I heard they're rich and barely defended." A scarred Krell pirate, one of the few survivors of the Syndicate's collapse, shook his head violently. "Are you insane? Those are protected colonies. The humans will come." But there's profit," the first criminal insisted. "There's no profit if you're dead," the Krell snarled. "Listen to me, I was at Sanctuary Prime. I saw what they did. 12 ships destroyed in 8 minutes. Our entire ground force captured in less than an hour. The humans don't mess around. They show up, they wreck you, and then they hunt down everyone involved." Another criminal, from a species known for being cautious, asked, "But surely they can't protect everyone?" "They don't have to," the Krell replied. "The Guardian fleet moves fast. The new sensor networks mean they know about attacks immediately. And even if they're delayed, the colonies now have their own defenses. The peaceful species aren't helpless anymore." The conversation died. Word had spread through the criminal underworld. Some targets weren't worth the risk. The galaxy had changed. The predators were learning to be afraid. Back on Sanctuary Prime, as evening fell, Ven gathered the colony's children for story time. It had become a tradition, this telling of the battle that had changed their world. "And when all seemed lost," Ven said in his storyteller's voice, "when darkness covered our world, the Deathworlders arrived. But they didn't bring more darkness. They brought light. They brought hope. They showed us that strength is not about hurting others. It's about protecting them." A child raised her hand. "Teacher Ven, are the humans still here?" "Some are," Ven replied. "But more importantly, they taught us to protect ourselves. They showed us that even small people can be brave. And they made a promise. If we call, they will come. Will we ever be as strong as them?" Another child asked. Ven smiled. "We'll be strong in our own way. The humans are strong because their world made them that way. We are strong because we choose to be. We are strong because we stand together." 2 years after the Battle of Sanctuary Prime, the galaxy was a very different place. The Guardian fleet now included vessels from 18 species. The Sanctuary Network protected over 300 colonies. And most importantly, attacks on peaceful species had become rare. Captain Jake Morrison walked through the corridors of the new Guardian Fleet headquarters, a massive station built in neutral space. It was a joint project, combining technology and design from dozens of species. Human military efficiency, Velen artistic beauty, harmonic communication systems, Piri speed and agility, all working together. "Captain Morrison," a voice called out. Jake turned to see Admiral Frank Carter approaching. The older man had come from Earth specifically for today's ceremony. "Admiral," Jake greeted him. "Everything ready?" "Almost," Frank replied. "The delegates are arriving." "This is a big moment, Jake," The formal establishment of the Galactic Protection Force, no more emergency measures. This is permanent. Jake nodded. 2 years ago they had acted out of necessity. They had saved Sanctuary Prime because it was the right thing to do. Now that emergency response had become something bigger. Something lasting. In the main assembly hall, representatives from over 50 species were gathering. This wasn't the Galactic Council with its endless debates and political games. This was different. This was species who had decided that action mattered more than words. Ambassador Catherine Wells stood at the podium, waiting for everyone to arrive. Beside her stood Ambassador Velen, who had become one of humanity's strongest supporters. Together they would announce the new organization. "We are ready to begin," Catherine said, her voice carrying through the hall. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to the podium. 2 years ago, a colony was attacked, Catherine began. The Velen settlement at Sanctuary Prime called for help. They followed all proper procedures. They sent distress calls. They waited for the Galactic Council to act. And while they waited, they died. The room remained quiet. Everyone knew this story. But then something happened that the attackers didn't expect. Humans responded. We didn't wait for authorization. We didn't debate the politics. We simply acted. And in doing so, we proved something important. Protection isn't about rules and procedures. It's about being willing to stand between the innocent and harm. Ambassador Velen stepped forward. His small form seemed to grow larger as he spoke. My people have no weapons, he said. We have no warships. For thousands of years, we lived in fear because we could not defend ourselves. When the Krell attacked, we thought we would die alone. But the humans came. They saved us. And then they did something even more important. They taught us to save ourselves. He gestured to a group of Velen in the audience wearing Shield Corps uniforms. These are my people, trained, ready, able to protect our colonies until help arrives. The humans gave us this gift. Not the gift of weapons, but the gift of confidence. The knowledge that we are not helpless. Catherine spoke again. Today we formalize what began at Sanctuary Prime. The Galactic Protection Force is now official. Any species that wishes to join is welcome. We ask only 3 things. First, that you commit to protecting the innocent. Second, that you respond quickly when help is needed. And third, that you never, ever give up on saving lives. The chamber erupted in agreement. Species after species rose to pledge their support. The Harmonic offered their communication networks. The Peri contributed their fast ships. The Gentle provided medical expertise. Even species that had once been neutral, that had watched attacks happen without intervening, now stepped forward to help on Sanctuary Prime, now fully rebuilt and more beautiful than ever. A ceremony of a different kind was happening. The colony was dedicating a new monument in the central square. Ven stood before a crowd of Velen, humans and visitors from a dozen other species. Behind him, covered by a cloth, was the monument they were about to reveal. 2 years ago, darkness came to our world, Ven said. We thought we would be forgotten. We thought we would die alone. But we were wrong. The humans came. They fought for us. They bled for us. And then they stayed to help us rebuild. He pulled the cloth away, revealing the monument. It showed a human marine kneeling before a Velen child offering protection. The inscription reads simply, "When the strong protect the weak, civilization flourishes." Sergeant Kyle Bennett, now promoted to lieutenant, stood in the crowd wearing his dress uniform. Beside him were many of the Marines who had fought in the original battle. Lisa Carter, Danny Wright, and dozens of others. They had all come back for this moment. How does it feel? Lisa whispered to Kyle. Being a legend? Kyle smiled slightly. I'm not a legend. I'm just a soldier who did his job. You're more than that to them, Lisa said, nodding toward the Velen children who were staring at the human Marines with awe. You're a hero. You're the person who proved that the galaxy could be better. After the ceremony, Kyle walked through the rebuilt colony. So much had changed. The buildings were new and stronger. The Velen were confident and capable. Children played in the streets without fear. It was everything he had hoped for. A young Velen approached him carefully. It was one of the children they had rescued from the collapsed school. "Lieutenant Bennett," the child said shyly. "Do you remember me?" Kyle knelt down. "I remember all of you. You were trapped in the school. Lisa and Danny got you out. I'm joining the Shield Corps next year," the child said proudly. "I want to protect people like you protected us." Kyle felt a lump in his throat. "That's good. That's really good. The galaxy needs more protectors. Will you still come if we need help?" the child asked. "Even though we can defend ourselves now?" "Always," Kyle promised. "That's what friends do. We'll always come when you call." In the medical center, Dr. Helen Price was saying goodbye to Sora, her former student who was now a skilled doctor in her own right. "You've learned everything I can teach you," Helen said, hugging the small Velen carefully. "You're going to save so many lives." "You gave me this gift," Sora replied. "You showed me that healing is not just about medicine. It's about caring enough to keep trying even when things seem hopeless." "You had that in you already?" Helen said. "I just helped you find it." Sora smiled. "Then I will teach others the same way you taught me. The gift will spread. More healers. More protectors. More hope." Back at the Guardian Fleet headquarters, the formal ceremonies were ending. But in a smaller room, a different kind of meeting was happening. The military commanders from all participating species were discussing the future. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the head of the table. Around him sat commanders from the Harmonic, Puri, Gentle, Velen, and a dozen other species. They were planning the next phase of the protection force. "We've been reactive so far," Jake said, "responding to attacks after they happen. But we need to start thinking about prevention. How do we stop attacks before they occur?" A Harmonic commander vibrated thoughtfully. "Intelligence gathering? We need to know where the threats are before they strike." "And intervention?" added a Piri commander. "When we learn of criminal organizations planning attacks, we move against them first." "But we must be careful," warned a Gentle commander. "We cannot become the very thing we fight against. We must remain protectors, not conquerors," Jake nodded. "Agreed. We use force only when necessary to protect the innocent. We don't expand territory. We don't impose our will on others. We simply make it clear that preying on the weak will not be tolerated." The meeting went on for hours, planning and debating. But everyone in that room shared the same goal: make the galaxy safer. Protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Stand against cruelty and oppression. It was a mission that humans had embraced fully. But now it was becoming a galactic mission. Species that had never worked together were coordinating their efforts. Former enemies were becoming allies. The galaxy was learning to stand together against those who would harm the innocent dot in a dark corner of space. Far from any major colony, a meeting of criminals was breaking up. They had been discussing potential raids, looking for easy targets. But the list of possibilities had grown very short. "There's nothing left," one criminal complained. "Every decent target is either protected by the Guardian Fleet or has its own defenses now. What about the outer colonies?" Another suggested. "Surely they can't protect everyone." An old pirate, scarred and weathered, shook his head. "You young ones don't understand. The galaxy has changed. It's not about whether they can protect everyone. It's about whether you want to risk it. The humans don't forgive. They don't forget. Touch a protected colony and they'll hunt you to the end of space. They're just one species," someone protested. "One species that destroyed the entire Krell Syndicate," the old pirate replied. "One species that turned dozens of peaceful races into their allies. One species that made protection not just a word, but an action. I've survived this long by knowing when to fight and when to run. Right now, the smart move is to find honest work. The age of easy prey is over." The criminals dispersed, grumbling but convinced. The word had spread. The galaxy was no longer safe for predators. On Earth, in a small school, a teacher was telling students about humanity's role in the galaxy. The children listened with fascination as she described the Battle of Sanctuary Prime and the formation of the Guardian Fleet.